All right. So wait a minute. We are right now have a jury deliberating on our inquest. How do you feel?
I don't know. We'll see.
What's the inquest about?
Well, so this is the inquest into the death of Iosia Faletogo. It happened on New Year's Eve in 2018 in the north end of Seattle, so off Aurora, 95th and Aurora.
And are the jury asking questions, or are they just busily deliberating?
No, they've been asking really good questions. Mo and I had the inquest over a week. All the officers, there's 6 officers involved. They all testified. The inquest administrator hired an expert that looked at the case. And so, I'm getting a phone call.
You're getting a phone call? Do you think they're done?
I don't know. It's an unknown number. Let me see.
Let's check. Oh my God.
Hello? Hi.
Is it the jury?
It's a spam call.
I thought the jury came back. Okay, so you were saying the inquest administrator hired like an expert.
They hired an expert who, I mean, we'll see. I don't think the guy looked at all the evidence very thoroughly. He seemed to be caught off guard with some of our questions.
Some of your questions.
Yeah.
You did a good job.
Yeah. I mean, the case is, Mo and I, you and I have talked about this.
Yes. I'm Mo, by the way, in case people don't know. Because you've you've referred to me in the third person.
I mean, this is, not a natural way to have a conversation.
This is a total natural way to talk about this.
You and I have talked about this before.
Yes.
When you're involved in this process, you're also confronting your own biases, right? And I go into the process and I think someone dying at the hands of the state, that's what law enforcement is.
Yeah.
Death penalty, looking at that as, in the matter of 10 minutes from when this guy his plates were ran to the time he was shot and killed, that officer was a judge, jury, and executioner for a traffic stop, of improper lane change, someone died. And so I think I go into it thinking that's not okay, automatically. And so that's my bias.
Okay.
And so now it's up to 6 citizens of Seattle to see what they think.
What they think. Now, are they being asked any questions about anything that would establish that what the officers did was wrong?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of their questions, I mean, during the trial of the witnesses kind of got to that question. I still remember one of the juror questions was, so let me back up, just explain a little bit of the facts. So Mr. Faletogo, after he got pulled over, ran from the police. He had a firearm on him, and while he never had control of the firearm, it was next to his person when he was tackled. And by the time he was shot, it was about 3 feet away from his feet, a little more or less, depending on how you're doing the measurements. And so one of the questions was, should fear and emotions overpower objective facts? And I thought that was a really good question because objectively, Mr. Faletogo did not have the gun, and he couldn't reach it.
Yeah.
And, you heard officer after officer saying, well, he could have reached it. So, but there's no objective evidence he could have reached it at the time he was shot. And so I think that there's a lot of credibility lost with that answer.
So when you say the credibility lost, the officer lost credibility by saying...
Or the city lost credibility.
Or the city.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, why don't we... I mean, is it possible to kind of flip that? in that do the police officer just overreacted? He was emotionally unprepared for the conflict or the situation, and then he just acted from a place of emotion and overreacted, and that's what happened.
And is that justified?
Well, the question is
it?
Well, if it's justified or not is for the jury to decide.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily justified. I think that if you're going to go out there, carry a gun, you have to be trained to be able to handle yourself. And if you find yourself emotionally overwhelmed in a situation like this, you shouldn't be having a gun in your pocket running around the city.
And this goes to a larger context about policing.
Yes.
How are we recruiting? I mean, police are an inevitability, right? We live in a society where we have laws. People have to follow those laws. There needs to be some sort of law enforcement, but I mean, going back to your point,
yes.
Right? We need the right people in those roles.
Okay. Now, going back to the inquest, are the jurors asking questions based on the evidence that you got out of the expert?
Well, you tell me.
I mean, I think they're interested in bias.
Yeah.
The questions I'm reading from the jury, they're asking about the stop. They're not even asking questions about the shooting.
Yeah.
Almost all of the questions are about why was the guy it suggests to me that they're going like, was the stop justified?
Well, so should we back up and explain the bias that we're talking about?
Yeah, talk about the bias.
All right. So, Mr. Faletogo, I mean, the name might give it away. He's not an Anglo-Saxon male.
He's not a white guy.
He's not a white guy. He's of Samoan descent.
Okay.
Grew up in Seattle. Larger man. And, the officer said, I didn't know what race he was. A couple of people said that. He's obviously a minority.
Do you think that's a credible answer when you're asked, what is his race? I don't know what his race is. I wasn't paying attention to that. Do you think that's a credible answer?
I don't, but we have the jury to decide whether that is.
Well, why don't you think it's a credible answer?
Well, and this goes back to, so let me finish my explanation. So this goes back to when we were asking the expert, Seattle, like a lot of police departments across the country, has an anti-bias policing standard. Race should play no role in how you perceive someone to be more or less dangerous.
Yeah.
And we all come in with biases. We're taught that culturally when you grow up. And so my question to their expert was, what role does bias play in the perception of danger, of whether someone's a threat or not? And yeah, do I think the questions are getting at that? I hope they are.
What was the answer?
He said it should play no role.
It should play no role in the perception of danger. But the reality is that it does.
And I think I think most people should know it does.
Why are police officers... Why would a police officer necessarily be scared of somebody who is of a different color skin, a person of color?
I mean,
why?
You grew up in America. I mean, I think as Americans, we grow up in a culture, a media environment that, for whatever reason, places minorities as a danger to society. And you see this. There was a recent New York Post article. This wealthy woman OD'd on cocaine.
Yeah. And
it was in a very ritzy area of New York City, and I forget the headline, but they called it, and she was doing drugs with a HBO exec or something. So when a wealthy white person does this, it's called like a flat party gone wrong or something. She's up in this nice ritzy place. Hey, but if a minority does it, it's a crack den or whatever words you want to put to it. And what still catches me is when the officers pulled over the car and gets there, they asked if Mr. Faletogo was just shady. And I hear that word shady, and immediately my perception is there's a racial component to this.
But isn't it true that there was also police officers of color who responded to the scene?
There were.
Okay, so how does that work out?
Hey, I think we all grow up in an environment that I don't think that escapes you from biases that were taught by society.
Okay. And this perception that, that people of color, that you associate them with danger that society puts out. But doesn't society also put out a lot of affirmations and positively reinforcing images of people of color?
Yeah. I mean, those two things can be
So there's
true.
both.
Yeah.
I mean, if you see, like, you could say, like, white people are serial killers.
Well, but I mean, hey,
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Has that made it? Actually, I actually listened to a really great stand-up comedian, and she's going on and on about how, you've never actually seen a black serial killer. Like, they catch those guys immediately. It's like all the serial killers are white guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, when you're the dominant race, it's harder to put you into a box. I mean, we're both Mo and Furhad, right? Middle Eastern names.
Yeah.
If I was to ever do something wrong, I guarantee you my first, middle, and last name would show up on the headline. It's a way to other someone. It's a way to say, this person's a danger, not, it's I think it's done subtly.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's part of a larger conversation about how we look and categorize people because of their race and what we look at as danger or threat.
I don't disagree with you. I think that what I was left with as I went through this whole process is that we still have like a ton of work to do to understand our own biases and my own bias as well. I just hope that the inquest, and inquests are non-adversarial. We could talk about this stuff like you and I are talking about right now with the witnesses, but they kept objecting. When I was trying to question the officer about bias and really exploring with him, they would continuously object. They wouldn't let me ask the questions, nor will they let us put on an expert to educate the jury so that we can talk about it. I really think that if we talk about it in a way in which you don't feel as though people are calling you racist.
And that's
right.
That's
I'm not calling you a racist.
Right?
I just want to have a conversation with you about what happened. And I want to talk to you in ways in which explores your bias. And people go, I'm not a racist.
It's that defense mechanism,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we all have biases. We grew up in a society where, we talk about discrimination as this bad thing.
Yeah.
And I forget who, it must have been a professor in college or something, broke it down. She's saying we all discriminate. We decide what we're going to wear every single day. We make decisions based on past information that we get. That's all discrimination.
Yes.
And when it becomes a problem is when your job, your occupation is to treat everyone equally. And yet we talk, we should look at our own biases, what we feel threatened by, what is different to us, because different is often scarier, and have an honest conversation and say, why do I feel that way? Is that fair for me to feel this way? Instead of shunning that and saying, I don't see color, I'm not biased, I'm not a racist. Have more of that exploration.
Are you confident that this jury is right now looking at this case, at these issues, with the type of awareness about bias? Do you think that that's what's happening?
I think
that they know, like, okay, I got biases, I'm going to answer these questions. Do you think that's what the jury's doing?
I think so.
Yeah, I do too. Well, I think that we're going to have to wait.
Yeah.
All right. I don't think my phone's going on.